Hi, I'm Andrew and I'm going to show you something cool I made with an old wagon. This old wagon I bought off Craigslist was in rough shape. It was beat up and covered in rust. I used a grinder to cut the axles and pull off the wheels. Then I cut away all the bolts holding the frame pieces to the wagon bed. Next, I laid out a piece of scrap wood to act as a straight edge and cut the wagon in two. Then I went at it with a wire brush to knock off most of the surface rust. You can really see how quickly it blasted through the rust. Then an 80 grit sanding wheel finished up the rest. I was pleasantly surprised there was a lot of good steel hiding underneath all the crud. Now onto the wheels. I gave them the same wire brush treatment. A coat of satin polyurethane covered everything up. Now you may be wondering how this is all going to come together, but I have a plan. A piece of the wagon bed will get mounted on a piece of plywood and become a shelf. The wheels get mounted underneath with bolts coming out of the wheel holes. They'll become coat hooks, and the whole thing will mount on the wall. I cut a French cleat and attached it to the back along with a spacer with the help of some glue and brads. Here's an interesting part. I mixed up some alcohol dye, rubbing alcohol mixed with some liquid fabric dye. Shake it up good and paint it on. I don't know about exact ratios here. I'm just winging it. The cool thing about this is because it's alcohol based, it dries quickly and you can do multiple coats to try to tweak the color. Just make sure you keep shaking it up as you go. I rubbed off the excess and it really made the grain pop out. I have no idea how this is going to hold up over time, but right now it's a great looking distressed finish. I broke apart this ladder that I found sitting in the trash. The only parts I was really concerned about were the long rails. I got them inside, got them cleaned up, and cut mitered corners to make the frame around that plywood back panel. Then I finished it all off with some paste wax. I took some big carriage bolts and figured out how long I wanted them to be, then heated them up and bent them into coat hooks. Used a big wrench to get the leverage I needed on these. Now it's time to lay everything out. I transferred the measurements to the back side and drilled recessed holes for the hardware and followed them up with through holes for the bolts. I ran one nut all the way down, then put on a washer I salvaged from the ladder rails and followed with another nut and tightened them against one another. Through the wheel, through the board, tightened up on the back, and I had to cut off the carriage bolts because to get a long enough section without threads for the hook, I had to buy really long bolts. With the bolts cut, I could finally get a ratchet on there and cinch them up tight. I ran out of hardware at this point, so I started working on the wagon bed, which will become the shelf. I drilled some holes, mounted corner brackets, and screwed it to the backer board. Here I'm cutting one of the ladder steps in two, then squaring it up on my miter saw. They'll become shelf supports. I specifically cut it this way so the fresh cut edges wouldn't show. And there's a certain joy when you put in the final fastener. This is definitely the most ambitious video I've ever made, and maybe the most ambitious project as well. It took a lot of effort to get this old wagon into a shape where I could reuse it. I usually hold on to stuff and just wait for the inspiration to strike, and this popped into my head one day, and I knew exactly how I wanted to use this. I hope this encourages you to save something from the trash. That's where this wagon was headed if I hadn't taken the time to turn it into something new. I get so much inspiration from watching other YouTubers. I never would have tried to tackle something like this without a lot of the tips and tricks, things I've picked up by watching other YouTubers make their videos. I really believe makers help make more makers. That's the whole goal, is to try to inspire people to get out in their garage and do something of their own. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this project, take the time to subscribe, and there'll be more projects coming soon. I try to put up videos about once a week.